Let the words of my mouth be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, the planning committee plans to meet Tuesday evening to plan a meeting to make plans for the next planning session. And if that announcement doesn't make you laugh or cry, then probably this message is not for you. Some wise guy said, "Life is what happens while we are making other plans." You're a Sunday school teacher, concerned about the personal struggles of one of your students. And so you prepare a lesson especially for that student. You pray for him. You choose scriptures and illustrations to apply to his situation. And then on Sunday morning, you enter the classroom eager to start the lesson and then discover that he and his family decided to visit Uncle Elmo. Now it's time for Plan B. You married the man of your dreams. He was all you ever wanted or hoped for. Both of you pledged your undying love for each other for as long as you both shall live. But death destroyed your marriage. Maybe the death of your husband or the death of love, which can be far worse. But in any case, it's time for Plan B. You moved to Mexico City. You set your career goals high. A big house, a new car, and college-educated children. But then you lost your job and your health. And lying flat on your back, looking up, you realize it's time for Plan B. A wise man said, "People may plan all kinds of things, but the Lord's will is going to be done." The Living Bible translation of that verse says, "Man proposes, God disposes." Now that is not to say that you shouldn't plan. If you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. But in all your planning, be prepared for Plan B, which is often the best plan of all. First, let's take a look at Plan B in the Bible. And if you do, you probably wonder whether Plan A ever really happens. I don't think so. Because God and the rest of us have been stuck with Plan B ever since Adam and Eve decided they didn't like Plan A in the Garden of Eden. The Bible is a story of Plan B. Early in Genesis, Joseph was the favorite son of his father. Together, they had some wonderful plans for him, but then his brothers sold him down the river, and Joseph wound up in an Egyptian prison, falsely accused by Pharaoh's wife. Then Plan B kicked in. When his brothers finally found him there, Joseph said to them, "You meant it to me for evil, but God meant it to me for good." Hey, that's Plan B for you. Israel was delivered from Egypt with a series of terrible plagues, followed by the dividing of the Red Sea. Then they came to the border of the Promised Land, and then, would you believe it? They voted 10-2 not to go in. And for the next 40 years, they wandered in the wilderness with plan B. Israel conquered the land of Canaan with the help of God and without the help of a king. But then people got kind of nervous. And they decided that they needed a king, like the other heathen nations. But the prophet Samuel warned them of the terrible things that would happen if they persisted with their plan. And in spite of his many warnings, they insisted on plan B, and then they got their king with all of the abuses of power that Samuel had predicted. For their sins, Israel was carried off into captivity by the Assyrians and the Babylonians. While there, Nebuchadnezzar threatened to throw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the fiery furnace, unless, he said, you agreed to worship the golden idol that he sent up. Their answer was, we don't know what God's plan is. You hear that? We don't know what God's plan is, to save us or not. But we are not going to worship your idol. Whether it's plan A or plan B doesn't really matter to them as long as it is God's plan. Well, the Apostle Paul in the New Testament had plans to carry the gospel to Rome, which at that time was the capital of the world. He had already evangelized and planted churches in other great centers of commerce and culture throughout Europe and Asia. Now he made plans to go to Rome. But what he didn't plan was that he would be brought there through the courtesy of the Roman government as a Roman prisoner. And so Paul was arrested on a bum rack and held without bail for 2 years in Caesarea. Then, to avoid certain execution by a kangaroo court in Israel, Paul appealed to Caesar. Then he was shipwrecked on the way to Rome. And finally, he writes from a dark prison cell to some friends in Philippi, saying, quote, I want you to know, brethren, that my circumstances have turned out for the greater progress of the gospel. Hey, that's plan B for you. You can see it in the Bible, but do you see it in your own life? So when you come face to face with plan B, what do? I suggest 4 good things to do when you come face to face with plan B. It begins, first of all, trust the sovereignty of God. Because no matter how far from your original plan B may be, God is still in control. God is behind the scenes, and he moves all the scenes he is behind. All things eventually work together for good to those who love God and are called according to his plan. So, Jesus asked, are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny?